Okay, we are live. Welcome everyone. Hello and welcome to the API Chronicles, Unlocking the Future, a live celebration of APIs hosted by Marqeta. My name's Sophie Churchill and I'll be your moderator for today's live stream. I'm a key account manager in our enterprise team in Europe and I've been with Marqeta for almost 3.5 years now. We're thrilled to have you join us today as we dive into an exciting and critical topic, successfully building and launching a card program in Europe after a successful launch in the USA. And as businesses look to expand across the Atlantic, they face unique challenges, from navigating complex regulatory landscapes to understanding diverse market dynamics. In today's sessions, we're going to explore these intricacies and share some key strategies to help ensure your European expansion is a successful one. So we've gathered a panel of experts today who have first-hand experience in this space, and they're here to share their insights, lessons learned, and some best practices too. So whether you're in the early stages of planning or already making moves towards Europe, you're in the right place to gather the knowledge and tools you need. And if you have any questions today, please drop them in the comments and we'll ensure we cover them. So let's get started. Welcome, everyone. I'd love to have you guys introduce yourselves, tell us a little bit about you, your current role, and your experience to date. So, Samuel, if we could start with you, please.
Brilliant. Thanks a lot, Sophie, for that introduction. And hi there, everyone joining us online through the amazing internet. Nice to meet you, everyone. I'm Samuel from Payhawk. I am the product manager for the corporate cards and have been partnered with Marqeta for the last few years through our payment processing journey. And we have launched multiple card programs with Marqeta, multiple successful card programs, both in Europe and the US. And I will be sharing a host of experience from our existing relationship with Marqeta, as well as my previous experience in the payments journey and the payments landscape.
Brilliant. Thanks, Samuel. Over to you, Christian, please.
Hi, everyone. My name is Christian. I have been with Mastercard for over 12 years in various capacities. So started in our business development function in Frankfurt, then was heading core product management for Central Europe. Then I was general manager in one of our European markets for a while. And currently, I'm looking after fintech enablement and crypto go-to-market for Mastercard in Europe. And obviously, have touch points with Marqeta and the wider industry, and happy to share my perspective and engage with Samuel and Jess and see where the discussion takes us.
Absolutely. Thanks, Christian. And Jess, last but not least, please introduce yourself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jess Cook. I'm a solutions engineer with Marqeta. I've been in the payments industry and working for program managers for around 14 years now. I've been with Marqeta working on solutions and integrations for both the US and EU for the past 4 years, having recently relocated to the EU to work on program management around 7 months ago.
And we're so glad that you did, Jess. We're very lucky to have you. So thank you, everyone, for the intros. As I say, great to have you here. And let's get stuck into the questions. So, Jess, I'll start with you, if that's okay. So let's start with how does the payment landscape in Europe differ from that in the US, specifically when considering launching a card program?
Yeah, thanks, Sophie. So I could spend a lot of time on this topic personally, but some of the big ones are generally knowing that the payment systems and landscapes are different. So if you have an integration that is specifically set up in one way in one region, due to the payment systems and the different payment rails, you might need to be setting up your integration slightly differently in a different region. In addition, there are regulations in the EU that have technologies around 3DS that's mandated here. So there are additional technologies that you need to add onto your program when coming over to the EU. One of the topics that I also like to talk around network rails is the difference between dual message and single message, and the fact that the US has the PIN debit rails, which is a single transaction, whereas that doesn't exist in the EU. Everything is dual message. And those are some of the top ones for me.
Thanks, Jess. And maybe, Christian, you can help on the next point, where what kind of key trends in card usage amongst European consumers, and what are you seeing as those key trends, and how do those differ to the US?
I think there's certain common themes in Europe, but then of course there's no such thing as the United States of Europe. I mean, it's 400 million customers, and if I'm not mistaken, I'm personally German based, so we are bordering 9 countries, and you will see that payments to a certain extent differ from a cultural perspective also. But I think one key difference that I see is that in the US, credit, as in proper credit cards, we would call it revolving credit cards, is a very big thing. As in, you don't pay the entire amount due to the bank at the end of the month, but you roll over part of the bill. We see that by and large in Europe, that does not resonate, and we see a lot more what we would call charge cards. So I accumulate all my transactions until the end of the month, right? I see them real time in my app typically, and then I pay the entire amount due. So that would be a charge card. And now with the digital enablement of debit cards, where essentially every single transaction typically hits your account as a consumer the very same day or the next day, that is getting more traction. So I think that's the key difference, credit versus charge and debit in Europe. I understand that in the US, on average, a carded person has 9.5 cards, which for sure is way less in Europe. But then when I mentioned, so that is some very basic principle that we've seen. I agree with all the points Jess made in terms of technology, single message, dual message, the special impact of PSD2 and the regulation on strong customer authentication, where we also see that in the US, 3DS or even PIN is sort of I don't want to say bypassed, but it's not applicable in many cases in the US, which I think comes also with different, fraud rates and whatnot. But also in Europe, we see that there's some cultural differences. For example, if you look at Portugal and Germany, they have a relatively strong preference for digital wallets, especially for online payments, whereas Greece and Ireland, for example, they like payment cards way better. But there is a common theme throughout Europe, and it was, I think it gathered special traction during the pandemic, that we have a secular shift away from cash at the point of sale towards cards, and even, let's say, hardcore cash sort of leaning economies like Germany, like Austria, who are the typical ones, right? They now lean towards 50%, going towards cards. That is one thing. And then, of course, we have the secular shift, as in stationary retail migrating into e-commerce transaction, or as we would call it, a hybrid transaction, like self-checkout, or in a stationary brick and mortar retail. And that of course also affects how consumers pay. So these for me would be some themes, and looking at Samuel obviously for his perspective. But so US versus Europe, it's simplified credit versus debit or charge card. Within Europe, moving towards cards away from cash, moving away, simplified speaking, from classical brick and mortar into e-com, into these hybrid self-service checkout experiences that also change payment behavior.
Thanks, Christian. And actually, that's kind of leads very much onto the next question, I would say, because rightly so, as you say, Europe is not just one place. There's lots of different nuances in all the different markets within Europe. So maybe, Samuel, you can touch on this point, where are there any specific markets or countries in Europe that you feel are more receptive to new card programs, or is it a case of language first, and as such, a UK launch is often considered as a first step from the US?
Super brilliant question, Sophie. The UK is always a very logical starting point when coming from the US, maybe not just because of the language difference. It does share some market familiarity with the US in terms of the consumers are more open to the regular spending practice. We do see, as Christian alluded to, quite heavy use of these charge cards, so a rolling credit line, a rolling credit facility need within the UK. So that's very akin and very similar to some of the credit practices that we see in the US. But we do also see some heavy adoption on the debit side of things within the UK. Particularly speaking out of experience from customers that I have worked with directly, they do want to see a further adoption and more of a digital card program that's very much digital, allowing you to tokenize your card everywhere, allowing you to add your card to different online stores, online providers. But then that is not just within the UK. That's a general practice within Germany and also other large markets such as France, as well as the Netherlands. There are a lot of localized, more alternative payment methods, alternative payment rails, but the cards remain to be the main driver for adoption in the local markets. We do see a shift also in Germany, where the consumers are very much used to using cash, but now are starting to shift more towards cards. And the German market, the French market, and the Netherlands market are very, very much familiar with card adoption, and are starting to see similar numbers, similar statistics to what UK consumers are used to as well. And I think in general, the European market, there is a very few places in the European market that have not yet started to adopt card products, and card products are in general very much highly used within the European market. So I believe it's much towards the particular business case that you're trying to solve, that you could cater your card program and make it more specific to the local market regulations. But from a US perspective, going into Europe, I think targeting the large markets in general is always a great option.
Some great insights there. Thanks, Samuel. And I'll move to Christian to see what maybe we can learn from successful card programs. Obviously, with your experience, Christian, you've worked with a lot of partners that have successful card programs. And what can we learn from those already operating in Europe, having launched in the US, and vice versa?
And I think especially sort of crossing the Atlantic does not seem to be a very easy feat, right? If you look at very successful established players such as N26 or Monzo, that they realized, I think it's two distinct markets. And I would want to add to what Samuel said, why we see, for example, the UK being such a hotbed for innovation. I think it's an ecosystem play to a certain extent. You have strong VCs, you have accelerators, incubator, you have talent, right? You have everybody speaks English nowadays. Everybody wants to live in London, kind of, So you have this, you have funding and capital. I think to a certain extent, you also have progressive policies, as in the FC8 sandbox. And I think this leads to very successful results. If I'm not mistaken, the former CEO of Starling said it took Barclays 100 years plus to get to 19% market share, and it took them 9 years to get 9% market share. And I believe 13% of the UK population use Monzo. So I think it's as a account in part. So I think I would agree with Samuel that the UK is a very sort of a good bridgehead to come over and to expand from there. Whereas what we see, let me call them continental European programs, they obviously benefit from the fact that we have this SEPA, so the Single European Payment Area, and the ability to passport licenses within this. So it's a bit like, you set up, develop once, deploy many. And again, back to my comment, there will be local nuances, but also building on the thought that Samuel put out there, let's say you build a challenger bank that is pretty universal. Like you have a current account light structure with a debit card, a nice app, good processes and everything. And you can pretty much roll this out in Germany, France, Spain, the Netherlands, and so on and so forth. And of course, then if you feel, I think that your proposition resonates very well in the market, you might want to double down and bring on some local talent to help understand why that works particularly well and even get better, or you feel that you under leverage the market. You might want to understand, why are you not that successful? And again, payment is also a cultural dimension. So I think these would be things that I would be looking at. But I think when it comes to the cracking the US market is not a super easy one. And then what I see, we need to differentiate also between the typical B2C fintech that is very much top of mind, the Revolut, N26, Monzo, and so on and so forth, and B2B payments, where I think a follow your customer perspective, as in you build up good traction in either side of the Atlantic, and then you build from there. That gives you, I think, some credibility, some head start, and then you build out from there.
Yeah, absolutely, Christina. I like that. The comment at the end around sort of follow the customer, as you say. So it wouldn't really be a topic about payments if we didn't touch on regulation, just slightly. So Jess, and you did touch on this a little bit at the beginning. So what are the sort of key regulatory differences that we see between the US and Europe that we need to be aware of?
So I would definitely call out PSD2 as the major regulatory difference here. One in part because there are operational impacts to your program and just understanding consumer protections in both the US and the EU regardless. So from a regulatory perspective, there are limits that are associated with being able to do e-commerce transactions. You need to have a 3DS solution in place with your program in order to meet those requirements. So being able to add that into your operational and your tech stack, and potentially working with a program manager who has their own in-house 3DS solution is going to be a really important part of being able to understand the regional differences of the countries that you're now going into.
Yeah, absolutely. And maybe, Samuel, you could touch on that as you've experienced this firsthand, where kind of what steps you need to take to ensure you're compliant.
Absolutely. The regulatory landscape in Europe is something that I think is where we're saying it's constantly changing, and there's constantly new and new regulations. PSD3 is now knocking on the door. We're just now experiencing the sunset of 3D Secure version 2.1, which is part of the Payment Services Directive 2. So there's a lot of regulatory aspects that then come down and they go onto your technical stack. So you need to appreciate those regulatory changes, those regulatory environments, and how they apply to your day-to-day card programs. What does that mean to the actual consumer, to the actual customer? And I think as Jess put it quite well, PSD2 is pretty much everywhere now in Europe. It's mandated with every single transaction, and we're trying to businesses such as our own are trying to balance and make a careful balance between the best customer experience, but then also offering this compliant, this secure service within Europe that complies with regulations. In the US, of course, there are regulations similar to this. It's to do with the card issuing, so ensuring that your cards are screened before they're issued. That this does impact the customer experience, but it doesn't impact it, I think, at least as much as 3D Secure or EMV 3D Secure, as mostly known, impacts the day-to-day consumer. So we really need to be conscious of this changing landscape, with new technology coming in to make this experience more frictionless for the consumer, and adopt these new technologies as part of the integration with the processor. And I think from our experience, at least from the point of view of using Marqeta, and we have definitely seen any new regulatory changes being expertly translated into a technical solution that Jess and her colleagues are amazing at providing the insight and the knowledge of how to apply them in practical terms.
Thanks, Samuel. And lovely shout out to Jess there as well and the team. So thank you for that. But yeah, just following on from that, maybe in slightly more depth, is around the sort of operational differences in launching the card program as well. And Jess, you touched on this, so maybe you could elaborate slightly more. So let's talk maybe multi-currency capabilities, for example. That's definitely an operational difference. And as I say, maybe you can go into that in a bit more detail.
Yeah, absolutely. So in the US, you don't see multi-currency options very often. You're going to just have a card that has a straight USD account associated with it, whereas multi-currency is ubiquitous in the EU. You're going to want to be able to go to other countries, not have to worry about FX and cross-border fees. So you want to make sure that you have a multi-currency bin in place to be able to support that. Now, from an operational perspective, you have to work with that into two capacities. One, with the networks to ensure that you are set up correctly to be able to use those bins. And two, from, say, a card product perspective, to make sure that each card product that you have is issuing and settling in the correct currencies for your cardholders. Other operational differences is, I think we've mentioned this before, tokenization. I still personally think is more prevalent in the EU than even in the US, where you can still use cash basically anywhere that you need to, whereas you definitely see it less or more in the EU. Even myself, I use cash way less here than I was in the US. So being able to accommodate the different variations of tokenization based on what your cardholders are looking for is important as well.
Yeah, great points. Thanks, Jess. And Christian, kind of still on the kind of operational topic, in your view, do you think we need to establish local offices or partnerships in each country that we plan to operate in?
And I think I I know we debated this, and I think you need to define who is you. Is you a program like Payhawk, or is it Marqeta or Mastercard or whatever? Let's assume for this case, it is Payhawk or a program which fintech intending to start. And I was giving it some thought. I would say it depends. I know it's a lame answer, but I think it really depends. If you do a low thrills B2C, relatively early stage, challenger bank like offering, ideally, it is so easy, so intuitive. Then you add some chatbot and AI support functions. So ideally, you can get away with multi-language support and a light touch, let's say, headcount initially, right? Under the assumption that you want to keep your cost base under control, and so on and so forth. Let's say, but let's assume then you don't want to do a B2C offering, but you're doing B2B, including expense management, reconciliation, for T&E and these kind of things, and you speak to businesses. I would think then, a Spanish or French or Dutch or German business, they would quite likely like to have a native language support where they know they have an on-site telephone number and whatnot that they can call. And then, of course, it also depends, how do you push your product? Is it basically, selling online through an app kind of model or do you need to basically meet with people at trade fairs, conventions, and so on and so forth? So I don't think there is a one-size-fits-all answer. So I think you need to think about what's your target segment, consumers and businesses. In which market do you want to start? What kind of support do you need to provide? And again, if I was in the shoes of a person starting, their own company, their own fintech, I would say, okay, let's ideally go for this, develop once, deploy many kind of setup, and say, I capture the top 3 markets, let's say the UK, Germany, and France. Then I have, I don't know, above, I guess, 150 million people easily that I can speak to. And then I see how this evolves, and I more or less adjust my operating model to see how the business succeeds and how it resonates with the markets. That's a bit my my perspective. But again, it's up for discussion, right, Samuel?
Yeah, absolutely, Christian. I can absolutely echo what you just said. And it really depends. It really depends on the proposition, what you're targeting, and who you're targeting. And I can speak from experience. You don't necessarily always need to establish local offices. There are numerous benefits to having local offices and local-based payment rails, for example. But I think in general, if we are to talk about the European market in general, if you do plan on securing an electronic money license, you're basically passported to all European countries, and then you can operate across all of them. So that can really be pretty much a one-size-fits-all solution for you. But of course, that does come with a lot of overhead that you need to plan ahead from a legal perspective, from a regulatory perspective, if you do plan on launching an electronic money institution within Europe. But yeah.
I think I would add one more thing, especially as you're crossing the other direction into the U.S. That at a high level, it's really important that you have local legal and regulatory consultation, either by yourselves or with a BIN sponsor who can help you understand whether or not, is it actually, a legal matter, whether or not you need to have a local institution versus, your product base.
Yeah, absolutely. Great to have you guys all chip in on that one. I love that. So I'm going to head back to you, Samuel, on where we talk about vendors or selecting vendors or partners, should we say. How do you go about evaluating and selecting vendors, for example, for card production and distribution?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think you have to start again from the broader picture. Which markets do you plan on launching your card program in within Europe, as well as the same goes for the US. But I think a lot of the positives, especially if you are starting off and looking to launch these types of card distribution, card production services, you need to look at very heavily into the technical implementation and also around the support structure, the support function, because realistically you don't want to compromise on the customer experience. You want that to be as seamless as possible. Usually the card product itself is the only physical thing that the consumer has in terms of seeing and holding in their hands, that's related to your business. Everything else is now virtual. So it's really important to have a really good vendor supplier for card manufacturing, card fulfillment, and shipment. There are a lot of great experienced vendors out there. The selection is not easy, and I think it's mostly down to who has the best technical infrastructure, the technical facility to produce the numbers of cards, with, of course, different variations. If you want your card to be more fancy, if you want those nice shiny metal cards, you need to find a supplier who will be able to work with those and essentially be able to ship them. For example, within Europe, the expectations from consumers, and this goes back to where you have your local offices, local branches. The expectations from consumers is that they would have the cards in their hands as quickly as possible. Especially, it's a very dynamic fintech landscape, and consumers want to start spending as quickly as possible with their cards. So and they need to find the best distribution rails within Europe, be it DHL, TNT, and so forth, that provide additional services such as next day shipping, express shipping, and also going back to the UK market. In the UK market, pretty much everyone now is used to having things delivered to their door very, very quickly. So yeah, the selection is not a trivial thing. Definitely consider those aspects as part of the selection journey. And I think, Jess, maybe you can comment on the Marqeta offering, and because I know that's something built in house. That's a really, really great proposition.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that goes into some more of our questions around why you would pick a program manager as well. So definitely from a Marqeta perspective, for program management, we offer in-house card fulfillment vendors, to your point. So we would honestly select what we think is the best vendor for you, depending on what you are looking for. If you are looking for those shiny metal cards, if you're looking to get to market really quickly and you want a virtual card while your physical card is shipping out. We do digital first as well. So that's an offering that we have. And it expands beyond card fulfillment. We have direct integrations for tokenization. We have our own in-house ACS for 3DS. With we have disputes offerings as well. So I might be getting a little ahead of myself here, but choosing a program manager, especially if you're going into a new country, means that you have experts in region to handhold you through this while you focus on the day-to-day of making sure that your customers get the best in class experience that you're used to providing, regardless of where you are in region. You have one contract, one partner, one technical integration. You have help with those integrations from a program management perspective. So you're really looking at an all encompassing package to help you kind of navigate the differences of a new region.
Sophie, if you allow for me to comment on what Jess and Samuel alluded to, I think it's almost like you have these two counterintuitive trends, right? On the one hand, there's this concept of digital first that just touched upon, and I think it's super important because for avoidance of doubt for the people on the screen or on the stream, digital first in our language would be you download an app, you KYC yourself, and you create a virtual card that sits in your Apple Wallet or Google Wallet instantaneously, and that takes out this media breakage, as in I download the app, I'm all, I want to use that fintech service. And then as per Sam's comment, even in the UK, it would take 2 days or whatever until you get the plastic. So you have that, you need to get through this valley of, disappointment, if you will. But if you have that digital first, you can leave your apartment and you can make your first payment because the card had been digitally provisioned in there. And of course, there's this instant use. Then there is the the cost component, obviously, right? You don't need to produce plastic and ship it and everything. And that is one trend that we see. But then the other trend that is countering this is that these metal cards or recycled plastic cards, as per Samuel's comment, they're really the physical manifestation of that program. And whether it's premium metal or very sustainable recycled plastic, it really is a differentiating factor that I think 8 to 10 years back, I think wasn't really, it was all plastic cards, some were golden, some were not golden, but now it really makes a difference. And as per comments, I think it's important to look at it from both angles. And I think it's key that Marqeta can play to both these or can cater to both these needs of digital on the one hand, but not sort of letting or not foregoing the opportunity to differentiate on the physical form factor.
Great point.
Yeah, definitely. And there's definitely some options. I think personally, oh, I love the fact that I can just go out and not have to take a card and just use my phone. But then also I love the idea of a flash metal card to put down as that. Again, it's all about the customer base and kind of what your customers are wanting and needing as well, and how that differs. But yeah, all excellent points. Thank you, everyone. So we've kind of touched on the fact that, like Jess said, our program management capabilities in Europe for providing that full end-to-end solution now. And Christian, I'd like to touch on how you think, when we're talking about customers, how you think their expectations for card products in Europe differ from those in the US, and maybe Sam, you'll be able to answer to this too from your first-hand experience as well.
And maybe before or in addition to just answering the question, I also want to be clear in the program management, because I don't know how diverse the people behind the computer are today. Program management for us, as opposed to pure processing, is like processing, you just route transactions, right? Just quote unquote, just. And program management, you also do additional tasks like card fulfillment, chargeback handling, all of these things. And in previous times, right, if you wanted to start a card program or a fintech, right, you needed to look for a core banking provider or whatever, a BIN sponsor, a processor, a program manager, a scheme, obviously. So you had sort of that plethora of choices to make and picking different pieces of the puzzle that ideally complement one another, in a perfect manner. and where you try to minimize friction and handover pain points. And I think, without you speaking on your behalf, Jess, is like the fact that Marqeta kind of absorbs this complexity and puts it behind the curtain from a program perspective and say, we can do that. That provides value in itself, because, and I think, let me throw this thought out there, reducing the number of participants that you need to coordinate, and you have all these discussions around what's your release cycle, do you have a free spirit, just reducing the number of partners, there's value in itself, because you minimize complexities. And I think that is one of the key things, and we see that as a big trend and a big facilitator in terms of getting programs live. When it comes to the differences, US, and I think this is a common thread for Europe and the US as well. When it comes to what are the differences on launching a card program, I think we touched upon regulatory, and obviously we touched upon the fact that certain propositions resonate multi-currency versus not. Samuel made the very valid point that a strong customer authentication line with PSD2 is a must-do, and you need to get that right with the tokenized, embedded, nice offering. Then we had single message, dual message. And I think, again, as a program, if you can partner with someone like Marqeta, you can speak both languages, the American language and the EU language, to use that abstraction, right? That helps immensely, because, you need to have this sensitivity, and you need to be smart enough to ask the right questions. And sometimes I think it's super tricky to even be cognizant of what you should be asking for. So I think having a partner that can tell you, this is how you do it there, this is how you do it there, that is so helpful. And if you start your program, there's so many other things to get your head around. And if you can offload that to someone that has experience in handling it and is not doing it for the first time, I think that then you have a good plan.
You hit the nail on the head there, Christian. Yeah, absolutely. It's just the all-encompassing solution that usually customers trying to enter the market, like Payhawk, that we are trying to expand and facilitate new card products that are both common to Europe and the US. We're looking to streamline all of the operational aspects and have that regulatory aspect only as something that's done particular to the region, but then ensuring that all customer experience is not broken up between the regions. We realistically, customers look for this streamlined solution, all encompassing, with all of the necessary market specifics that are compliant with the schemes as well. It's very important to mention that there are differences in the card schemes as well that I think should not be taken for granted. It's very it's very important for customers looking to launch in different regions. They comply with the scheme regulations as well. And as a processor, that is invaluable. Realistically, if you were to create your own processor directly connected to the schemes, there are an immense number of operational challenges, scheme compliance challenges that you have to commit to on a regular basis as part of your operational activities. And I think that this is a general aspect that both Europe and the US have in common, that we need to essentially comply with the scheme regulations as well.
And if you allow for me to comment, I think the scheme regulation is important, and I think it always regulation always has this negative connotation. I know people don't mean it, but I think one needs to be cognizant that we, as a scheme, we need to comply with national laws. Obviously, I mean, it's a no-brainer. But then, almost equally challenging, we need to provide global interoperability. So we have 3 billion cards, 115 million plus physical acceptance location, and obviously, we want every, I don't know, Tunisian or Moroccan card to work at any Japanese, Malaysian, or a Mongolian store, right? And back to Samuel's point, this somebody needs to keep an eye on this, right? And we're doing this, and of course, it comes with some complexity. And if you face this make or buy decision, as in buy partner with Marqeta, I think especially at the beginning, you should do that, because more often than not, you don't have a proven product market fit. You don't want to invest all these fixed cost components to set up card operations, like being a proper bank, maybe even, right? And this comes with, I mean, the barriers to entry have reduced drastically with all the cloud computing, software as a service and whatnot, but still, it's not an easy feat. So I would say always, partner with people that can do the behind the curtain stuff very, very well, and you focus on selling your proposition to the right segment in the right market, getting that product market fit right, getting your business case right, getting your sales right. And then if you mature and grow, there's always option to evolve as an organization. But at the beginning, I think these things you don't want to have on your to-do list.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think just to touch on that point, actually, Christian, it kind of naturally leads into the next point, which we were going to look at, which is like, how do you build and execute a robust go-to-market strategy for Europe? And you kind of touched on that already. And I wonder if you could elaborate on your thoughts on that. And again, Samuel, I'll bring you into the loop on that one as well, because I think it's all about that strategy, and obviously that's vital as to how you're going to build that and execute that. So I'd love to hear more about that.
Very happy to have a stab at it. I think first you need to understand your target market, right? What is your target segment? What are competing and existing offers? What are substitute offers? How big is the market, right? Is it Luxembourg or Germany, right? No offense, but right, who do you want to speak to? What are the use cases? What are the unsolved problems that you cater for? What's your USP ideally? So you know what you want to do for who, and how many of the who's are there. And then of course the business case is an interesting component, right? How much revenue can you generate? What are your unit economics, customer acquisition costs, ongoing revenue streams from customers, operational costs, and so on and so forth. And this is where you just understand and you say, okay, I now have my strategy playbook, what I want to intend. And then I think you should go into some form of rapid prototyping, minimal viable product, maybe some focus groups or something, just to try that. And then you start building something to get it out there. Typically you would do, I guess, friendly users or a pilot here and there. You course correct, you adjust, and then you implement basically. And then you would have your typical marketing levers that you can play to drive up use cases. And then it's all about monitoring, right? And again, they're passing the ball to Jess quite likely later in the conversation. You want to see how do volumes develop? What are the transactions? What are approval rates, fraud, all these things where you need line of sight how your business is actually doing as a program. And again, I think they're having the right partners, like the schemes, like program managers, I think is quintessential to take you through the process. But Samuel, I mean, you for sure have a view on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Christian. You expanded pretty much on throughout the whole picture of what it means to go to market, and I think it really depends on your particular use case that you're trying to capitalize on. And I think that in order to facilitate a successful use case, you do need to have the necessary, I think, support to understand what the cost to benefit is to launching this new product, this new card product in within Europe. There are a lot of specifics in Europe. I think the main drivers, at least to launching new card products, have been um, what is the best product that we can offer for the money within Europe, considering all of the competitive, considering the whole competitive landscape. And you start to see indicators such as interchange rates, FX fees, additional services that can be bundled as part of your card program. And those are really, really important markers in Europe to help differentiate a successful program. And you need to really understand those key concepts, the underlying value behind them, not just what's behind your product, but also ensuring this particular product is well accepted across all markets. It is. It also drives good financials, as of course it's really important to a business, and basically solves the use case the most in the particular use case. And I think this flexibility is and understanding of the local market is really what's important. And having the visibility of those key performance indicators on a day-to-day basis, it's really, really important to then, as Christian mentioned, to then adjust and tweak as you go, and as you launch this new product in the market. And data is really important. And I think, for speaking from experience with Marqeta, they've provided all of this additional insight around what, and even providing reporting analysis on a monthly basis that gives you these glimpses into how your program is performing. And then you can then translate that information into actual business insights and what you need to change with your card program. So yeah, I think that about covers my point.
Thanks, Samuel. And I'm very familiar with those monthly reporting that we deliver. So I'm glad to hear that that's of benefit to you and the Payhawk team. So I just want to thank everyone so much for your time today and all of these insights. I think it's very clear that there's not just one or two considerations to make when you're looking at crossing the pond, should we say. I just want to put it out there to the wider audience. If there's any questions or comments, please drop them in the box and we'll answer them. But I know that we have covered a lot of ground today with this discussion. And I will just leave it with one question for each of you in short summary as to, if you have one piece of advice when crossing the pond, sort of whether it's going from the US to Europe or Europe to the US, what would that be? And I'll start with Jess on this one. Oh, you're on mute. Sorry, Jess. Classic.
I knew I was going to do that. I think my one piece of advice, as we've kind of mentioned throughout the discussion, would be to think about choosing a program manager to help you with that transition. We've discussed a lot of the benefits of having somebody to help you through that process. And I really do think that that's key, whether it's a program manager or consultation on how to enter into that market. That would probably be my biggest piece of advice.
Thanks, Jess. Samuel?
Yeah, I would actually echo that quite well. It is really, really key that you during your starting stages, you surround yourself with this valuable insights from the respective experts in the industry, people that have been through those challenges, and then to assess them, to see how they fit in your particular in your particular portfolio, in your particular picture of what you're trying to achieve. Simply tapping in from from all the knowledge that's been gathered, and from people that have been front and center globally. That's really, really key to getting you started.
Thanks, Samuel. And Christian, over to you for any.
I don't want to be the lame one to say everything has been said, but not by everyone. But I would really very much agree with what Jess and Samuel said. But just to maybe go even one step deeper, but I think if you have a partner such as Marqeta that can cater to, the US and Europe, and you work with them on either side, I think the benefit is twofold, right? They understand exactly what you're doing wherever you are now, whether it's in the US and you look to go there or vice versa. So they know that part. They know the status quo of your business and your setup and all these things. And they know sort of the setup and the target picture of the target country or target continent more than country, right? And I think the beauty is that you don't have to do a lot of explaining here, because if you swap partners there, it will always be that you have different parties, and there will be something lost in translation. But if you have a partner that can go this journey with you, I think it takes out a lot of complexity. And then the other thing would be, I would say, speak to as many people and in the target market, whether it's at conferences or industry events or because fintech people, they like to gather. And I think you always learn about success stories, not so successful stories, and there's always bits and pieces that you can take out for yourself, not to run into the same trap again.
Brilliant. Well, thank you, Jess, Samuel, and Christian today. It's been a really, really great discussion, and I hope that everyone who's had the opportunity to view this has felt the same. So thank you very much for your time today, and I will see everyone soon. With that, we'll end today's live session. Thank you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye.